So to tell you about how my life got turned upside down, I have to start back in, not this past December, but the December before that. I moved from the South, where I had community and had cultivated a lot of great things, to where my now estranged spouse's job would be up here in New England. And from December to June, not because I chose to, not because I wanted to go off of meds, I didn't have access to healthcare, and I wasn't on meds for 6 months. And as soon as I could get back and see a doctor, I went and got back on them. Well, the doctor hadn't prescribed the SSRI/OCD medication that I take before to anybody, and he had done some research on it, and it was loosely associated with Columbine. Yes, that Columbine, which I'd never heard of before, and I'd been on it for several years. So if we fast forward to mid-October was when I had my mental health crisis. I was on about 40% less of the medication I was taking that was working fine before. I was under a lot of stress, and before I moved and from Alabama, I worked in suicide prevention. And if I was talking to someone who had called me, I would have said my stressors outweighed my coping mechanisms, and that caused a crisis. And in mid-October, I was on about, like I said, 40% less of the meds that I needed to be on, and I wasn't very assertive with the doctor. I should have said, shoulda, woulda, coulda. I should have said, I've titrated up more quickly before. Can you please, work with me? And I didn't. And looking back, for the 2 months before October, so August, September, I was extremely depressed. I can see that now. I was very lethargic and easily fatigued, and I can see that 40% of medication made a big difference. And I'm in therapy, I'm doing all the things that, that's my dog, that I'm supposed to be doing. Without any support. I had spent the last 5 years before that effectively being a single parent, because my estranged spouse was in employment training, I'll just say, for a few years, and it moved him to a spot that we could not afford to move our family to. So I was stuck back in Alabama, effectively a single parent, and on medication, doing all the right things. Parts of that time, most of the time I was working, and because I'm disabled, but I don't get disability, or I have disabilities and I don't receive disability payments. I try to work. So in mid-October, I had a mental health crisis that had been building up for the past 2 or 3 months, to the point where it spilled over, and then I ended up getting arrested. And one of those charges was criminal mischief. I had confronted I call her my bonus daughter. I confronted my bonus daughter when my spouse wasn't there. He was on his way back from work, about neglecting a dog that she had begged for. It was at the time an 8-month-old hound mix, and she had increasingly been leaving it in a crate in her bedroom for 8 to 12 hours. And I let her think that I wasn't taking care of it at all, because she needed to learn a lesson, but I actually was taking the dog out. And she was becoming increasingly flippant with me, arguing that it was just a few hours. I'm like, no, pretty sure a few hours is like 3 to 5 maybe, not 8 to 12, and not when you're making an active choice. It's not like you're working or going to school, you're going to hang out with people. You're choosing that over a responsibility. And I had sent her like articles and tried to like over the course of 2 weeks before this happened. And I got fed up with it, and I went into her room to confront her. And I, told her, how would you like it if you were put in a bathroom for 8 to 12 hours with no mental stimulation, nothing, for you? You wouldn't like it. And I was screaming. I was upset. I was upset because I have a service dog. She's 10, 11, and she's supposed to be retiring. I have an emotional support animal who's not with me right now because he's 85 pounds and he is at my house, which I helped pay for, that I can't stay at right now because of that incident. So that's part one of why I'm currently in the situation I'm in. I'm living in my car and doing gig work. I was staying in a hotel, and it just became too much. I had to choose between food and shelter right now. There had been a few days where I couldn't work, so I got behind because of the weather. There was a big snowstorm. I got behind because of the weather, and I'm just doing what I can to get out of the situation. So if I back up to when I got arrested, my bonus daughter had left her room, and I went back in to collect the dog's belongings, the toy, the crate, all of the stuff. And I saw empty vapes, not nicotine vapes for YouTube. I don't know how censorship goes on YouTube, so I'm just gonna say there weren't nicotine vapes. And this is after I had confronted her. She wasn't inside the house, she wasn't in her room. And then I decided to go through her drawers, and I took the drawers out and dumped them out. I didn't throw them. I have a herniated disc in my neck, so I wasn't like hurling things, but I wasn't being careful about it either. I was pissed. I was angry. And we give them a lot of autonomy, and I felt like I deserved to know what was in my house, especially with what my spouse does. It could affect him negatively, and that's what was going through my head. And I was also I was pretty ragey, I'm not gonna lie. I was really mad, wondering if drug use had been a part of why she was being so neglectful of this dog, what was actually going on. And when I went through those drawers, I found more drugs. I did. And I realized that my daughter, who's a couple years younger than my bonus daughter, had been hiding things in her room because she knew for a fact that we didn't go through her room. And that made me more irate. And instead of just taking a time out, I went and screamed at her about it. I'm not proud of it, but it happened, and there's nothing I can do, except for the things I'm doing now to make up for that. Being completely honest, I got arrested for criminal mischief for destroying the dresser. I didn't destroy it, but for that, which is a dresser I actually brought home from the side of the road. If you see my dumpster diving videos, I brought this dresser back for myself, and my bonus daughter came out. I'm not gonna name any of their names, but my bonus daughter came out and she was like, oh, I like that, can I have that for my room? And I'm a mom, so I was like, of course you can have it. She repainted it, and I get that she was upset that some of her stuff got messed up. I went through her closet. I wasn't gentle about pulling anything out, but I wasn't purposefully breaking anything. So I found drugs in my teenager's room, and one of my younger teenager, when I was backing out of that room, grabbed me on my arms and jumped me from behind because she looking back on it, I realized she probably realized, oh shit, mom's finding everything that we hid in her room. She jumped on me, and I didn't know who was jumping on me, so we scuffled a little bit, and I got charged with assault. And a couple other things, like the cops threw everything they could at me. When my spouse wasn't even there for 90% of this happening. Molly's shifting. Hey, baby. Let me say hi. Hi. Oh, it's okay. I think she wants some more water, so we might have to do a part 2. But long story short, I went without mental health care for the first time in several years and got back on meds as soon as I could. Doctor didn't give me enough. I flipped out, basically. I didn't touch my bonus daughter. I just screamed at her. And my youngest child slept through the entire thing. So there's a little bit more that happened. My spouse wasn't there for 90% of this happening. So he's getting calls from teenagers who are probably not being completely honest with him. And that's okay. I understand. I was a teenager once too. But at the same time, he apparently called the police. And when the police came, I didn't think he actually called the cops. When the police came, I was laying in my bed next to a sleeping child. And in the police report, or the subsequent temporary restraining order that my spouse took out on me while I was in jail, stated when the police arrived to control the situation, well, they cuffed me in front and took me to jail. I was that not a problem, that much of not a problem. I don't talk to cops, and I just told them that I will have to have my day in court because I could clock it as soon as they got there. I knew they were going to take somebody, and I didn't want to say anything about my spouse because I didn't want him to lose his job, and I wasn't going to narc on my 14-year-old daughter for jumping on me. So I took the lick, and I was in jail for 3 days. It was horrible. I've never been in jail for that long, ever. And I got out, did exactly what the court wanted me to do. I can only talk about it now because it's wrapped up, and I pled to way less than what they charged me with. And I've been getting treatment, more treatment than they've asked me to since then. Since I was released from jail, I went directly to the doctor, and he put my prescription back up to where it was when I was in Alabama immediately. I'm talking the day after I was released from jail, I went to the doctor's office and addressed that immediately. And he also upped my anxiety medication. I have an anxiety disorder. He was very nice and very concerned, and my spouse has just taken a very hard line on it, and I haven't been able to say my side of what happened because of a restraining order. And that's just like the beginning of it, honestly. So for about 2 months after that, I managed to stay in a hotel while the case was ongoing. And in that time, something else happened. He actually stole my service dog in training that was brought up. I'm gonna try not to get emotional here. But he took, when I went in for the temporary restraining order court date, I had moved hotels, and I didn't know that I had to tell the court that within 24 hours that I had to move, or where I moved. So they pulled a warrant out on me the night before, come to find out, the night before this court date. That charge got thrown out, but I still went to jail They took me from court back to jail for one night for breach of bail for not updating my address. And he went to my hotel room with my permission and took my service dog Molly, who's here with me now, my car, my belongings, and the service dog in training, Theo. And when I got out, he only returned the car and my service animal Molly and kept Theo. And that was in November. He's not disabled. He has no reason to have him. He was in training. And that's a whole another story that I've been trying to resolve, but I've come to accept that it probably isn't going to be resolved in the way that it should have been, if the amount of time hadn't gone by like it has. So that brings me to now. It's been about 3 to 4 months since mid-October. I am up here alone, and I've gotten I was a stay-at-home person before that, basically. So I've gotten 2 gig working jobs so I can do what I can to try to make money and get myself out of this situation, because it looks like we're probably going to get divorced. I don't know how I feel about that, to be honest with you. I have had something happen before where he blamed me at first for it and was very ugly to me about it and blamed me for the entire thing. And I ended up being completely vindicated to the point where there was actually there's a car going by, a settlement that we received that I can't talk about more than that because there's a non-disclosure agreement. But suffice it to say that something's happened before where he has not had all the information and blamed me entirely for the issue, and come to find out he wasn't given all the information. That's kind of what's going on here too, but I don't think I want to resume a relationship with him, but I would like to peacefully co-parent. You know, before this, he entrusted me with the children for almost 5 years of him going back and forth training different places and us stuck in Alabama. I'm not from Alabama, I'm from Florida. And it's been really hard. You know, I don't want to talk about my kids or anything right now. Just I've never been without them before like this, and it's very hard. Very hard. And I'm trying to get a lawyer. I have a friend who's helping me, but he has all the resources. He's cut me off from all of my funds, whether that's legal or not. People have said, you know, I don't know, there's nothing I can do about it. And I've been working 2 gig jobs day and night this past 4 months, trying to keep shelter over your head and eat and medication and going to appointments, and then being able to save money is nearly impossible. So right now I'm trying to live in my car and save money so I can get my own place, resume contact with my younger children who had nothing to do with any of this and hadn't gone maybe a couple of days without seeing me their entire lives. And I'm just trying to do the right thing. So that's a really long version of a complex story. And, you know, if you have anything to say or any suggestions, you're welcome to. You know, even if it's not very nice, I'm open to whatever, because I've decided to listen to a few people who've told me I should put myself out there, because I really am I'm trying really, really hard. And I hope that this outlet can give me a little bit of community while I go through this, because I don't have much community up here. I don't have any community up here. I'm probably going to start going to a universal Unitarian church, but I have to work all the time, so I don't have the luxury of getting to pick and choose those things. And there's a little bit more to everything, and I can get into that in part 2, which will be resumed later. But if you've gotten this far, I hope that I explained everything in a cohesive manner. If I didn't, I'll try to film this again. I don't do a lot of filming for YouTube, and my TikToks are usually of other people. So I don't have like a cinematic, I don't have a ring light. This is my car light, you know. And I gotta get back to work. So, peace.